Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome our Montanaro home church. Let us prepare our heart to heaven. Let's sing a song. Page 51, the Belvedere song. 51, the Belvedere song.
I know a place where the sun shines like gold, where the cherries bloom forth in the snow, and down underneath is the loveliest place where the four-leaf clovers grow. One leaf is for faith, and one is for hope, and one is for love, you know. And God put another one in for you. If you search, you'll find where they grow. But you must have faith, and you must have hope. You must love and be strong and so. If you work, if you wait, you'll find the place where the four-leaf clovers grow. I know a place where the sun shines like gold, where the cherries bloom forth in the snow, and down underneath is the loveliest place where the four-leaf clovers grow, where the four-leaf clovers grow, where the four-leaf clovers grow.
Thank you. Let us stand up and greet the Heavenly Father, God, and two parents. Today is October 6, 2019, Sunday morning. Let us bow. Please join me in prayer. 살아계시는 하나님 아버지 참부모님 안녕하십니까? Precious Heavenly Father, God and true parent, good morning, and the true family, good morning, and all brothers and sisters in the world, good morning. We are so grateful to meet you and meet true parent and our brothers and sisters. We are not living just ourselves, all creation with us. We are so grateful. Here in the Gorham, New Hampshire, the mountain colors changing, red and yellow and orange and green, so beautiful. We are feeling the comforting our heart. Now the time, the autumn season and toward winter, harvest time. Before get cold and white, you're giving us so beautiful color to reflect our life. Spring, start spring and giving us the yellow color, the blooming and the warmness, and summertime is all song, the nature sing, the cedar and river and mountain breeze, and children doing sports or hiking or mountain climbing and all kind of sports, and autumn, the getting chilly, cold, warm coffee or hot cocoa, warming up with group, sharing the heart and sharing the story. And the winter, we can like hibernating and read a book and deep journey with the story and all kind of season you giving us in the variety and adventure and love and faithfulness. We are so grateful. Your heart is still recovering from the past. We had World War I, World War II, and Cold War. So many people died for. We're very sorry that all sacrifice made people still scarred and pain and agony and suffering. We want to all liberate this suffering in the heart. Please guide today. We can celebrate with you and our Christ, returning Christ. Through that, we can resonate your heart and love and deep sorrow of your heart can liberate and our sacrifice and suffering can liberate with deep, deep heart and love. Please forgive us. We couldn't understand you so deeply and we couldn't understand Christ. We sorry. We want to start again to coming the front of you to like a little child. We want to repent our sin and fallen nature, and we can make new determination to become good son and daughter of you. Please guide us. You can create a beautiful family centering you and Christ, and you can design each family and each children. That is wonderful day to receive. Please guide us. Our pastor is preparing your word to the old children can rejoice and liberate you from the pain. Please bless this day. We pray and I report in the name of Raman and Tamiko Montanaro, blessed central family. Aju, Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Please seated and welcome our Pastor Montanaro. Welcome.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Today I would like to entitle my sermon, The Course of a True Man and a True Woman. There's so many things I can say, and there's some things I can't say. Because my sermons are broadcast publicly, I have a limitation in the sense that I don't want to make these sermons something what we would call in-house, meaning something that only people who understand the jargon and the beliefs of the Unification Church would understand. And yet, many times those things are on my mind and in my heart, the course that our movement is taking. But I can't always share those things freely because I don't feel that everybody would understand them, and that's not fair, in a sense, to everybody. So I'm limited because of that, but I hope you can understand that behind this I would like to share things that even our members who've been following our true parents and trying to build a true family for many, many years, that they can gain some inspiration and guidance. Anyway, the course of a true man and a true woman. My wife was praying about the seasons changing. And when we look at the changing seasons, we realize that everything is changing all the time. I've heard some people say the only thing constant is change. Right? The only thing constant is change. My body is changing. I'm getting older. I'm fighting with myself to be healthy. Every day I'm working hard. I've got 2 jobs. I'm trying to make money. We always are spending money and making money. There's that stress and that pressure on us to always make money. Everyone experiences that. We are growing. We're getting older. And as you young people are getting older, your bodies are changing. Your desires are changing. What you need is changing. When we get married, that is also constant change. And I think if we would ask, which is the more changing element, a man or a woman? What do you think is the answer? Which is the more changing person, a man or a woman? What do you think? What do you think is who is more changing?
I would say a woman.
A woman. I would agree. I think women, their body goes through a change every month, right? A cycle of a period where they're getting their womb is getting ready to receive a seed, but then if it doesn't come, then they have to flush out that preparation, and then they get ready again next month. Their emotions go through a cycle every month because of that, where they're feeling very warm and very, you know, sexy, and they want to receive a man, but then after that preparation goes, they start to cool down, and finally when they're in their period, they're not wanting to be with anybody. In England, they have an expression, "I'm in the flowers." That's one of the expressions for when it's a woman's time. And then she recovers from that and builds up again. So she's changing. Plus, in the cycle of life, when a woman gets pregnant and has a baby, she really changes a lot. I mean, her body is completely changing, her hormones are changing, and then she gives birth, and God gives apparently an amnesiac, meaning a chemical that is released after birth so the woman can forget the pain, actually. So women actually forget the pain so they can love their child. If you didn't forget the pain, you would resent that child for, "You caused me so much pain," you know. But you don't feel that way about your child. You love your children. Because women are designed by God to be the more changing element. That means men are more unchanging. And when we look at the unchanging changing, we think about this world, everything is changing. Everything is changing. The seasons, the cycle of life, our own bodies and our own mind is changing. We're growing. History. I was thinking about history. The divine principle, and again, this is one of those areas that I can't go into in the detail that I would like to. And you have to study the divine principle. If you haven't yet studied divine principle, I hope you take the time. You can read it, but especially I think you need someone to kind of walk you through it, guide you through it. Please come and see me. Our email is blessedfamilysanctuary@gmail.com. You can email me. I'll arrange to meet you if possible, or if we're too far away, we can meet by Skype or by Facebook Messenger. But we can meet. I can teach you what I know about the divine principle. You can study yourself. There are lectures online. I have put some lectures online. You need to study this. But anyway, the divine principle talks about the course of history, the second half of divine principle, from Adam right to the present. It describes a struggle between Cain and Abel as the base of all history. When I heard the divine principle, I was shocked that one man, Reverend Moon, could discover a principle that God has been using consistently throughout history to recover his children. That from the very beginning of history, God lost his children. So he found, because there was very little to grab onto, he splits essentially history into Abel and Cain. The younger brother Abel, the older brother Cain. Abel, who's in a weaker position externally, has the freedom then to discover God and to find a relationship with God. So religions have been in the Abel position in history. They're in a weaker position. The kings, the power brokers, the wealthy, the powerful people, they have been in the Cain position in history. And so history, when we study history in high school or in college, we look at the history of powerful people, right? The history of wars, the history of violence, the history of conflict, the history of wealth, the history of economy, how money moves, how economy develops, the history of industrial revolution. These are power brokers. We study the history of powerful people. But behind that is the history of the weaker people who are trying to build a relationship with God. What do these two histories have to do with each other, though? That's what the principle discusses. It talks about how once God establishes a relationship with the weaker son, Abel, he then asks Abel, now you must win your older brother. You must recover him. That's the foundation of faith with Abel and the foundation of substance with Cain. The foundation of love. He wants to kill you. He hates you. He senses that you're being blessed by God. And he's angry, resentful. And so he wants to kill you. But you must overcome that feeling of his. You must win his heart. And if you do that, then I can send the Messiah to that lineage, to that family, to that nation, to that world. I'm giving you a really brief summary of the entire second half of Principle. And so, from the family of Adam, right away he begins with Abel and Cain. But Cain kills his brother. The next 10 generations later, Noah, he has 3 sons again. Just like Adam had Cain, then Abel, then Seth. Then Noah has 3 sons. Shem, and then Ham, and then Japheth. And after the flood, Ham is supposed to inherit his father's faith and become the beloved second son. But he judges his father. And his father, when he wakes up, realizes his son has judged him, and he curses Ham. And that foundation is lost. God can't use Ham. Therefore, God cannot use the Cain-Abel relationship. 10 generations pass. Abraham. Abraham comes from the lineage of Shem, the older son, who was actually faithful. And then he recovers with his wife Sarah, but she doesn't have any children. So he takes Sarah's handmaiden, Hagar, and he has a son, Ishmael. Then Sarah conceives and has a child, Isaac, Cain and Abel. But because Sarah gets jealous and angry of Hagar, who is judging her and hating her, like, you didn't have a child, I'm the one who had a child for your husband, Sarah kicks Hagar out when she has Isaac. And so Ishmael and Hagar go in the wilderness, and that becomes the foundation of the Arabic people. Ishmael is the ancestor of the Arabic people. That's why the Arabs and the Jews are cousins. But like many cousins, the Hatfields and the McCoys, Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland, many times we find cousins are killing each other. Okay. So then, Isaac has 2 sons. Jacob, the younger son, and Esau. But they're twins and they're fighting in the womb. Cain and Abel. And the older one, Esau, comes out first, and Jacob, the younger one, is holding on to his ankle, trying to pull him back in the womb. Jacob in Hebrew means grasping, because he was grasping his brother's ankle, trying to pull him back in the womb, but he doesn't. So in his lifetime, he has to win this older brother's position. And so he buys the birthright from his brother for a bowl of lentils and some fresh baked bread when his brother comes in hungry from hunting. So actually he buys the birthright, the older son's position. And then he steals the blessing from his father. And Esau wants to kill him. Perfect setup. Cain wants to kill Abel. God is watching. History is watching. And finally, he wins after 21 years suffering in Haran. Jacob comes back with 12 sons, well 11 and a half, his wife's pregnant with the 12th son, Benjamin, and then all his wealth, many herds of animals he's won in the wilderness in 21 years. And he gives gifts to his brother and wins his brother's heart. And they break down, he bows 7 times to the ground to his older brother, Jacob. And he says, when I see your face, I see the face of God. What a beautiful ending to this conflict. And God can finally send the Messiah to this family. That's why Jacob's name is changed. After wrestling the angel right before he meets his brother, his name is changed to Israel. And the 12 sons of Jacob become the 12 sons of Israel, who become the 12 tribes of Israel. And this becomes the foundation to build a nation, because God can't send the Messiah now just to one family. There are nations built up on the satanic side. They will destroy that family if they can. So God has to build up a nation, the nation of Israel. And then when he's successful finally at getting at least a minimal foundation, he sends Jesus. He sends the Messiah, the Abel of Abels. Externally in a very weak position, right? Jesus. No power, no money, nothing. But he has to win first John the Baptist's heart. But he doesn't succeed in that. John fails to follow Jesus. And then he's alone and he has to try to win the people without John the Baptist. And he can't. And the people reject him, kill him, crucify him. So again, Cain kills Abel. And God has to start the whole history again. Not with the Jews this time, but with the second chosen people, the Christians. And for 2,000 years, since the death and resurrection of Jesus, Jesus had been working from the spirit world to try to bring spiritual children, to try to bring a nation, to build a nation, so that God could use that nation to send the Messiah again. And for most of my listeners, that is where we're at today. But Unification Church members know that the Messiah came back. That Reverend Sun Myung Moon is the second coming of Christ. Only the Messiah could have understood this pattern in history. And the Cain-Abel struggle went from the family level to the national level, and then, this is the most fascinating part of principle, God allowed a Cain-type view of life and an Abel-type view of life to grow up. What was the Abel-type view of life? In the last 400 years, from the Reformation, starting with Martin Luther, the Reformation began a process of seeking God, putting everything else, the world aside, and seeking God only. And then we find the Reformation with Martin Luther, and the Lutheran Church comes from that, and John Calvin, and the Calvinist churches, Presbyterianism, and the Church of Scotland come from that. And then you find the Baptist and the Anabaptist, and you find a development of different views of life, but they're all centering on God, 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 to the exclusion of this world. And then you find that America is built actually on the Great Awakening, which happens 130 years after the Reformation, with great thinkers like John Wesley and the Wesley brothers, George Wesley and John Wesley, who started the Methodism. And right in Connecticut, Jonathan Edwards and George Whitefield, another great reformer. And these great reformers, they make a fire of reform in the colonies before the Revolutionary War. And America is burning with a passion for God that is not found in Europe. And this is what ultimately leads to the revolution and leads to the birth of a new nation. And we're studying that actually in my school. I'm an para-assistant in a history class, and we're studying the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and the birth of our nation. It's wonderful. And you see this. America was founded on not just democratic principles, but Christian democratic principles. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The founding fathers believed that our rights came from God, not from men, that men cannot take them away because men didn't give them. This is the foundation of America. The Great Awakening gave birth to a new nation, America. And America didn't stop. The Great Awakening, there was a second Great Awakening. And we find also new religious movements in the 1800s coming up. The Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons, the Seventh-day Adventists, the Christian Scientists, all of them trying to find new ways of experiencing God. This idealism, this purity of heart is the basis of American character. On the other side, we find the Renaissance begins to give rebirth to Greek thinking. So we find the Reformation, and then we find the Great Awakening and the Second Great Awakening in America, and American idealism comes from this Abel-type view of life. We could call it a rebirth of Hebraism, of the Hebrew thought, of the Jewish thought. On the other side, we find a rebirth of Cain-type thinking, which is centered on Greek thinking, Hellenism, the man-centered view. Man is the center. Even the gods they created are like human beings. They're worse than human beings. They're having sex with everything that moves. Zeus is having sex with women on earth, giving birth to Hercules and all these other people, and the gods are fighting with each other and jealous of each other. This is not the absolute true loving God of the Hebrews. This is polytheism, and it's basically making gods in the image of us. And ultimately, you look at Greek culture, they worship the human form. The Olympics, where men were wrestling with each other, all naked, basically, right? And the human form was idealized in Greek culture. And human thinking. So you have great philosophy coming, right? Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. You have mathematics being born, Pythagoras, right? And you know, all the great philosophers come right? The great birth of theater in Greece, right? You find, so again, man, entertaining each other with fictional stories, drama and comedy, right?
Yeah.
So you find the great Greek tragedy and Greek comedy. So everything's centered on human beings, not on God. And so that culture dies out during the Dark Ages, after Jesus dies. But then it's reborn, Renaissance in French means renaissance, rebirth, right? In Italian, rinascimento, the rebirth of what? What's being born again? Greek culture, Hellenism. So you find Da Vinci and Michelangelo and Raffaello and all these great artists in the Italian Renaissance are making the human form again the center. We all love David, the statue of David. But David wasn't naked! They get away with murdering these Renaissance artists because they call it a biblical scene. But everyone's naked! You don't see naked people in the Bible. David wasn't naked when he fought against Goliath. Right? He wasn't naked. But the Greeks loved the human form. And the Renaissance artists loved the human form because they were connected to spiritually the Greek culture. And then philosophy is reborn. You have the great philosophers of the Renaissance. And then the Enlightenment, right, is the second stage, right? Like on the able side, we have the Reformation, we have the Great Awakening, the Second Great Awakening, the birth of American idealism. But on the Cain side, we find Renaissance gives birth to the Enlightenment, right? Philosophers like Descartes, I think, therefore I am. Not God exists, therefore I am. I think, therefore I am. And then it gets more and more Cain type, with people like Feuerbach, God is dead, and is God, this whole movement turning away from God, finally culminating in Karl Marx and Engels, Friedrich Engels, in 1848, writing the Communist Manifesto, turning Kant and Hegel, the German philosophers, on their head, getting rid of God. Kant and Hegel believed in God, but getting rid of God and making the dialectic, the relationship between the thesis and antithesis, fighting and struggling and destroying each other. That gives birth to a new beginning. And that's what communism believes. And all of our leftist friends in America, hello, they believe that through conflict we get good change.
Through what?
Conflict. It's a mistake. Because God's principle is very clear. Through relationship, through love and harmony, things develop and grow. Not through conflict. You only need conflict when there's good and evil. And the good and evil conflict each other, and good has to win over the evil. Okay, so we see a Cain-type view of life, culminating in the communist worldview. Denying God, resentful, wanting to kill Abel, wanting to kill the American idealism. We found a worldwide Cain and a worldwide Abel. Only Father saw that this was the result of a history going right back to Adam and Eve and Abel and Cain. Brilliant. He understood when Cain and Abel can unite, then the worldwide foundation for the Messiah is laid. This was done actually in 1992 when communism collapsed and when Gorbachev, the leader of the Soviet Union, and when Kim Il-sung, the leader of the most virulent form of communism in North Korea, both met with Father, Reverend Moon. They met with him, they welcomed him as a hero. They honored him, they gave him feasts, and they loved him. And he was the strongest anti-communist in the world. And yet they welcomed him because they saw they had no future without him. And so, Cain and Abel united. The foundation for the Messiah was laid, and Father could declare himself, I am the true parent. In 1994, he began a public speaking tour that the true parents have arrived. So I'm not hiding anything from anybody. Father is the second coming of Christ. But where are we now? Look at change. Women represent change. Men represent, therefore, what's absolute or unchanging. We should. Father did. But that's why I titled this, The Course of a True Man and a True Woman. For the women out there, for you women, there is no longer any excuse for you to accept a man who is selfish, who is arrogant, who is misusing love, who is out of control. There's no longer any reason for you to accept that kind of relationship. And if you tempt and have sex with that kind of man, you are responsible yourself. You cannot blame anyone else. You cannot blame him. Oh, what a jerk he is. He betrayed my love. He hurt me. No. If you look at a man, you know what kind of man he is, don't you? You know women. So stop playing around with them. There is a true man now. You have to welcome him as your bridegroom. All women in the world have to welcome the Messiah as their bridegroom, as their true bridegroom. Even though you represent change, if you can hold on to something that's unchanging, then your life can have true meaning. Your life can have an absolute center as women. Through that relationship, God will guide you to marry a real man, a man on earth who represents Father to you. And you can help raise him up to become a true man, to be absolute. So women, you have a course ahead of you. You must first internally marry the Messiah. You must be married to the Messiah. He is your bridegroom. Then you must marry in real life, and you must raise up your husband. You must take care of your husband and push him and pull him and love him and teach him how to become a true man. That's the course every woman must go. Hopefully it's easier than harder. Hopefully you get a man that's already working on himself. But he must be willing to go that course. You should not even touch him. You shouldn't be near him unless he's already focusing on that course. Because you'll have an impossible job if he is just a selfish guy and you think, oh, my love will change him. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. Because a man has to, inside himself, want God. Then he needs a woman to help him to become a true man. But if he doesn't want it, you're not going to be able to change it. I want to read to you from the Bible a couple passages about the marriage supper of the Lamb to show you that Christian history is understood this actually. And in the book of Revelation, we see these interesting hints at the marriage supper of the Lamb, the marriage supper of Christ. First of all, looking at Revelation chapter 12. Now a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. Remember the 12 sons of Jacob and the 12 tribes of Israel. Then being with child, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 diadems on his head. His tail drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. This is Satan. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she bore a male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up to God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. Okay? And then there's a war in heaven and Satan is cast out. Okay, then we skip to Revelation chapter 19. Nineteen 19:7. Let us be glad and rejoice and give him glory, for the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his wife has made herself ready. And to her it was granted to be arrayed in fine linen, clean and bright, for the fine linen is the righteous acts of the saints. Then he said to me, write, blessed are those who are called to the marriage supper of the Lamb. And he said to me, these are the true sayings of God. Okay? And then Revelation 21. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no more sea. Then I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, adorned for her husband. And so, the Bible is talking about the marriage supper of the Lamb. Blessed are those who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb. The Messiah comes as a man, but he's not complete without a woman. He can be the Messiah, but he can't be a true father. He can't restore what Adam failed to do without his wife. Father's first wife failed. So now Mrs. Kong is married to father. She can fulfill the role of true wife. But the role of women is still in flux, in change right now. And you women have a destiny. You must establish the role of a true woman. This is what all women must do. You must internally marry the bridegroom, the Messiah. You are the bride. But finally, you must then marry a real man and raise him up to become a true man. You cannot do this without a relationship with Christ. It's too painful. But if you have that solid rock in the center of your heart, of Christ in the center of your heart, then you can love this changing man, this man who's growing, this man who is not yet absolute. And when he becomes more and more absolute, finally you can receive the love that you've always wanted to receive from a man. Don't all women want a knight in shining armor? Don't all women want a true man? Don't all women want to be loved by a man who is unchanging, absolute, eternal, and true? You don't want to raise up your husband, but you have to. Because of the fall. Because women were the first ones to eat the fruit and to pass it to their husband. Women have to be the first ones to fix the problem. So the Messiah comes as a man, but you women have a central responsibility. Internally, you marry the Messiah, and then you take care of and raise up your husband. It may take years, but that's okay. That's your course. And you gradually, as he becomes more and more true, more and more solid, more and more absolute, more and more connected to God, he will be that loving husband that you've always wanted. He will take care of you. He will love you. But you have to do your homework first. Okay? Women? Yes? Ready to do your homework?
Yes.
Okay, raise your hands if women, if you're ready to do your homework. Okay, good. And you men, you have to don't give too much a burden to your wives. Don't be a jerk and then say, my wife has to save me. That's not how it works. Okay? You have to be a true man. And you have to ultimately be an absolute center of the family and love your wife. So that's your course. You must walk that course. But you may need a wife. You do need a wife to do that. So we both have homework. Right? You men, you ready to do your homework? Become a true man? Raise your hand, men, if you're ready to do your homework. Okay. All right. Okay, good. That's all I want to share with you today. The course of a true man and a true woman. Do you want to add anything, honey? No? Okay. Let's pray together. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for these words of wisdom that our true parents are giving us. We know that history is still being made. We don't know exactly where we are. It's like being in a river on a raft and you're banging around rock to rock through the rapids. History is moving so fast. But we know that some things were established by our true parents that are unchanging. Father's position as the Messiah is unchanging. The principle of how you work through history is unchanging, Father. Your love and you, Father, ultimately are the unchanging center of all of this. And I pray that we can start to rein in history and bring it in line with your will and your desire in your heart. There are many forces in society right now that are really evil, that are pushing history away from you. And I pray that we can fight and really help society to wake up and to become a true history of true men and true women who are establishing true families. Thank you so much. We ask your blessing on this day and report all these things in the name of Raman and Tamiko Montanaro, a blessed central family. 축복 중심 가정 라만과 타미고 모트나를 이름으로 보고드립니다. 아주.
아주.
아멘.
아멘.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.